verse 8. Of clean animals, and of animals that are not clean, and of birds, and of everything that creeps on the ground, 2 and 2, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. Okay? How did the animals end up at the ark? Did Noah go around and catch them or something, kind of idea? Did God send them miraculously? I guess that makes a little bit more sense, that God kind of sent them because God wanted to save them, and there was no way Noah would go over and I mean, he would not have known all the kind of animals on this planet. He had time, 600 years to study them, but still, he might not have known all of them, most likely not. Okay, and so it does make sense that God is more the one that knows them all, the one to send them all. Okay. Here the question always arises that, man, look at all the different kinds of animals on this planet. There's just no way that they could, I mean, even if the ark was pretty big, there's no way that they all could fit into this ark, right? Now, yeah, this thought is built on the wrong conception, or that we tend to think that because there's a lion and a tiger and a leopard and a puma and a panther and all different kinds of cats and from the cat family, therefore that he had to take one of each of these onto. There was a lion, there was a leopard, there was a cheetah, all of these kinds of animals on, right? And there was an African elephant and Asian elephant and a white rhinoceros and a black rhinoceros and different hippopotamus and bears, and right. That's not. It doesn't state that they were all there. Okay, we know that all rose plants come from a single rose plant in Kazakhstan, right? The same for apples as well, Almaty, right? They're in Kazakhstan. Coffee from one tree. Lots of different coffees today. Lots of different roses. Lots of different citrus fruits, etc. Right? Lots of different animals, but it does not mean that there were always all of them. Okay, we use what God made. From that, we made hybrids. Okay, and the same for animals as well. From one cat came different cats. In their genes, they could. Okay, but they were all, unlike evolution, where everything comes from one single cell organism. In this case, we see then they were all. They were from they were not the same species, right? They were all of their own kind. They didn't come out of one kind. Okay, so they were a kind of cat, they were a kind of dog, they were a kind of this, a kind of that, and out of that you get macroevolution. Microevolution, not macro, microevolution, where inside an organism you do get difference in changes. But it does not spill over that the one kind of organism, macroevolution, go into another kind of. Okay, because they were made according to their own kind. Okay. So yeah, that is as well an important point just to see here. It does not imply that there were hundreds of thousands or millions of different kinds of, because if you look at all the kinds of bugs, etc., in the ark. Okay, that's not how one needs to see it. So in other words, the amount of different kinds of species that were there, they could fit on the ark. Okay, and out of them, the rest came. I already spoke about the fact that the clean and unclean animals, when exactly came in the concept of clean and unclean, we know only Moses, in Moses' time they came. So in Moses' time it was stated, so Moses maybe then backdated this information, or was there some other way how God told them that this unclean and unclean? Again, we have no idea. We don't know exactly when this happened. And if anybody tries to say he knows, then I can't see how he can know this, because you can't find it from the Bible. Okay, verse 10. And after 7 days, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. Okay, as God said, after 7 days, water will come, go in, 7 days later, the water came. God kept his word, we know God keeps his word always. Always. Everywhere in the Bible, God keeps his word. Yeah, and if you think, what happened in Nineveh, exception? No, it's not an exception. But we will get to Jonah and we will look at that. Okay. Verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened, and rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, here the water starts. Okay, now, so many questions. So all of that water fall on earth, right? And then there's people say, so where all this water? If there's all this water covering the earth, right, where's all that water? Okay, and people say, no, it could not have happened. Okay, water ultimately nearly 7 meters higher, as we will see later on in the chapter, than the tallest mountain, so 7 meters above Everest. That means there would have been water more than 8 kilometers high on this planet. Okay, just imagine the kind of pressure that kind of water would create. Okay, yeah, and yeah, so the people then so there's this huge amount of water on this earth, and what happened to all of that water? Just for interest sake, they found now rocks underneath the earth, down in the mantle, which what they found in this rock is basically, if that is true, it will mean that there's a lot more than water underneath us than in the oceans itself. Okay, so there's quite a lot of water deep down, which is, praise God, not out in the open. Otherwise, the earth will still be covered with water, or at least lots of it will be. A lot more of it will be covered by water. Okay, so that is there, right? But I think more importantly is, if we're going to draw conclusions concerning how the earth looked like before the flood. Okay, so if we think there was an Everest already before the flood, right, then yes, the water had to be pretty high. But we don't know how the earth looked like. I mean, just imagine that kind of water, right? So much water, that pressure, okay, on the earth. It sure would have made certain weaker spots in the earth like jump up. Okay, it just makes sense. It's like a balloon. If you push down on a balloon, okay, now I know the earth is not a balloon, but if you push down with a little pressure on a balloon, right, you flatten it, okay, it's going to pop out. If there's a weaker spot in the balloon, that kind of part will pop out like a tire, okay. For example, I've seen how out of a tire where it's a weak spot, and suddenly all of older tires, that is, I've seen it a lot in Russia, then you have this big thing like sticking out because of the pressure. Okay, so this same thing could have happened here too. I mean, I know ground's not a balloon, etc., right? But the pressure of that kind of water on the ground was sure there's a lot more than just me pushing on the balloon. Okay, so it could have forced, and since everything is underwater, all of that happening is not really going to be seen. Okay, it might only be seen if it starts popping out in certain places. Okay, so yeah, so it is what I'm trying to say is that the water covering so much does not imply that all the mountains were that high before the flood, right? And yeah, that is just, things would have changed for sure. Things would have really changed during the flood, in the going up, coming down, etc. Right, of mountains, certain areas being pushed down, other areas being pushed up. Okay, so it is explainable. People would say, but this amount of water, for that kind of amount of water to fall on earth, to cover the whole earth, right, and especially up to the height of Everest, would be, I mean, open up a fire hose and you're not going to get that kind of, with in other words, a pipe with a huge amount of force behind it, a huge amount of pumping out water behind it. Right? You're not going to, in a year, well, actually not even a year, under 40 days that it rained, you're not going to get that kind of water. I mean, just imagine that amount of water falling on you to cover everything. It will flatten. It would have flattened the ark as well. Okay, I understand therefore why people say it could not have happened. I mean, if you look at it that way. But again, that is if you look at the fact that all the water came from above. And as we see, not all the water came from above. A lot of the water came from below. Okay, and we don't know how much water came from above and how much from below. Okay, and then second, as I already mentioned, we don't know exactly how the earth would have looked like, the heights of the mountains, etc., before the flood. Okay. One other thing I just want to say as well, I remember as a kid I used to think, Noah building, Israel is a pretty dry country. Noah building, I always thought, where the heck would Noah get all the wood for building the ark there in Israel? Because they're not very famous for, I mean, especially the southern kind of part, for their wood, right? The famous parts were Lebanon, up there, the cedars. So where would they get wood? And I mean, building an ark in the middle of the desert kind of, or very dry area would have looked very strange. But remember, it was not. The earth did not look like it. Israel, did not look like that at that stage. The whole earth was same temperature everywhere, covered in, well, at least there would have been a lot of trees everywhere. It was not desert, there were no deserts around. So there's no problem, and Noah was not really building a boat, a big boat, an ark in the middle of the desert. Okay? There would have been trees around him, so it could not have been too difficult for him to get all of that. Okay, right, so it's just kind of the way we're taught in Sunday school, and kind of as if Israel, this is how Israel looks now, that's how Israel looked then, this is where he built. We don't even know where he built the ark, right? It doesn't state where he was when he built the ark. Anyhow, okay, lots of things in Sunday school taught to us that doesn't make sense, or it's just plain wrong. It doesn't matter which denomination. Okay, and because I'm from a denomination where we kind of, well, teaching the word, praying, important. Even then, people make so many mistakes and so many untruths that we were taught as kids. And those things stuck with us, unluckily.